This discussion will be about the general anatomy of the heart and blood vessels. So on this screen, we have a picture of a heart. It's very diagrammatic, as you'll see when we look at a heart, that of the heart and its major blood vessels. And just to briefly go over, uh, this this here is the right atrium. Atria don't look like this for real in a heart. And you'll see if when you remember looking at a heart or have seen a heart that they don't really look like this, but it's shown as a chamber. If we would start here with a blood cell, blood moves from the atrium to the ventricle in that order. This is called the right atrium and this is called the right ventricle. Remember that on the patient, this would be the right side of the heart. If we trace the flow of blood from the atrium into the ventricle, if we traced a blood cell, it would pass through a valve. We'll be talking about valves later. Passes up through another valve into the pulmonary artery. Okay? Into the pulmonary artery. Arteries go away from the heart. And so a blood cell could either go to the left lung, or it's not really shown here, but there's another branch of the pulmonary artery that goes to the right lung. Pulmonary circulation. The reason, remember, that blood cells are going to the lungs is to get oxygen. So after the blood cell goes to the lungs, it comes back to the heart on the pulmonary vein. Okay, and it will choose one of the pathways back into the heart. If it came from the left lung, it would come in this way. If it came from the right lung, it would come this way. Back into the heart, into the left atrium. It will then pass from the left atrium into the left ventricle through the valve. From the left ventricle, it will then pass into the aorta. Once it's in the aorta is the largest blood vessel in the body that can supply blood for everything. It has choices of where to go, to the head, to each arm, or down and into the body circulation. Okay, the blood coming back to the heart comes back to the heart. If it comes from the head, it comes in the superior vena cava, labeled number 2 on the slide. If it comes back from the body, it comes in the inferior vena cava, and both of those dump into the right atrium again. Key thing to remember is that it's a one-way passage, that they're one-way flow through the heart and through the lungs and back to the heart. There are many paths you can take, but every vessel and every one of the chambers of the heart is a one-way street. Okay? It's a one-way street. That's a really important idea to remember. So, to review then, the flow of blood, generally, from the right side of the heart, okay, from the right side of your heart, it gets pumped through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. The reason it's in the lungs is to pick up oxygen. We've talked about this with the respiratory system. The major reason to go into the lungs, the major reason red blood cells need to pick up oxygen. Then it goes back in the pulmonary vein to the left side of the heart, from the left side of the heart into an artery. Arteries go away from the heart. We'll talk about arteries in a little bit. Then into capillaries, then into, which bring it to the body. Talk about capillaries in a little bit of detail in a minute. Then into veins. So here is where it dumps off oxygen, pick up CO2, and then back on veins, back to the right side of the heart. That is the general flow of blood through the heart. Now I'm going to skim ahead in my PowerPoint to get to the arteries, veins, and capillaries thing. So blood vessels then. There are 3, arteries, capillaries, and veins. And again, one-way streets. Okay? Every blood vessel is a one-way street. So an artery is going away from the heart, veins are going to the heart, and capillaries are in between. So if we look at this slide right here, blood coming away from the heart is coming down an artery. There's a branch into a set of capillaries. This is like the unloading and loading and unloading docks of a factory. The truck pulls in, dumps off its stuff, although remember it's constantly moving, so it doesn't really dump off. So there's all these different pathways that the blood could take, okay, to unload its oxygen, pick up CO2, and then in a vein, and the vein is a one-way street back to the heart. Let's take a look at each of these in a little detail. An artery is a very thick-walled muscular vessel. On this slide here, they're showing you the musculature around an artery. Okay? Why would arteries have muscles around them? Well, they can constrict and dilate to regulate, I apologize if that word's spelled wrong, to regulate blood flow. Okay, so an artery will constrict if there's less blood needed and dilate if there's more blood needed. And you see this reaction in your skin when you're cold or hot. Okay, when your skin turns red, it's because arteries have dilated to allow more blood into that area. And arteries carry blood away from the heart. Capillaries occur in capillary beds, generally. Okay, their walls are a single cell thick. A single cell thick. So they're very, very thin walled. They're one blood cell in diameter. So blood cells go through the arteries one at a time. Or I'm sorry, through the capillaries one at a time. Interestingly enough, in front of at the end of each capillary are things called precapillary sphincters. These are muscles that can, if they constrict, okay, if they close, blood can't go into the capillary bed, so blood goes on through and back into a vein. Again, really important ability of the body to control where blood is needed. If for some reason these areas don't need oxygen, then these sphincters can close. Or in a time when you want to divert blood from one area to another, you don't need all the blood going in through here and spreading out, so it goes through here and back to the heart, increasing the volume of blood in other places. It is at these capillary beds that exchange of nutrients and waste happens in your body. Okay? It is here that exchange of nutrients and waste happens in your body. Veins. Veins are interesting because first of all, they're very thin-walled, and they have valves in them. Veins, the valves help prevent blood from backflowing. So in other words, here comes blood. As the heart pumps, it gets pushed through, and then it falls back. And you're like, why in the world would it fall back? Well, think about this. Your vein coming up your leg, your femoral vein coming up your leg, is a long ways from your heart. Plus, blood is going against gravity. So one of the things you have to be able to overcome is keeping gravity from pulling your blood back down into your feet. So for that purpose, you have two mechanisms that help blood move through your vein, through your legs. You have the valves that keep blood from falling back. You also, when you contract your muscles around the veins, that helps squeeze blood up and keep it from coming back. People that are bedridden, often they move their legs around a lot to help them keep blood flowing, especially older people who have circulatory problems anyway. Their heart may not be working quite as strongly as it should. Then they'll move their legs around, or sometimes they'll put on those squeezy tight things to help squeeze the veins and help blood to flow along. So, but a real problem that humans have had to overcome is gravity. And one of the ways is with valves in the veins. Okay, and again, veins carry blood back to the heart. So one of the things we use to talk about blood flow in the body is blood pressure. And a blood pressure is the measurement of force applied to artery walls. And there's the book definition, if you will. There are two measures of blood pressure. Systolic pressure, which is the top number, and diastolic pressure, which is the low number. Systolic pressure is the pressure exerted when the heart pumps, pushing the blood. When it pushes the blood flows faster. Faster flowing blood, just a minute, let me go back a second. Faster flowing blood will put more pressure out on the walls of the vessels. You know about faster flowing things putting more pressure on if you ever stood in a stream that's fast flowing versus a stream that's slow flowing. A slow flowing stream doesn't seem to put very much pressure on you, but a fast flowing stream can knock you off your feet. Diastolic pressure, since blood is always constantly moving, the heart pushes it, but it kind of flows along anyway, is the constant pressure of flowing blood. In class, we're going to discuss how we measure systolic and diastolic pressure and do that. So there's some discussion of the anatomy of the circulatory system.